Hey, yo, Fro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. And while you're at it, shoot on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Fro Wrestling Podcast. If you'd like to be a member of the Fro Wrestling Podcast family, we would love to have your support. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live episode of the Fro Wrestling Podcast. This episode, we're going to be launching the fan voting for Round 4, or the Sweet 16 of our tag team tournament, taking your questions, comments, touching on today's news and rumors. By the way, the voting for Round 4 is actually live right now. Our Patreon members have early access. It launches Thursday night for them. It is launched live now for the rest of our listening audience. As we go through the show, feel free to call into our Fro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160 and give us your questions and comments throughout the Talk to Text service. You'll give your message there. It'll shoot up on my screen here, and I could try to get to as many of those as possible throughout the show. If you want to get started with the fan voting, the links are live at frolifeplanning.com/fan poll. Now, for some of you know, we also launched a actual home for our podcast information where you can get an idea of what topics we're going to be discussing throughout different episodes and shows. And that is also live right now at frolifeplanning.com/Fro Podcast. If you could take a look there, see some of the things we're going to discuss, and that can help maybe give you an idea what direction we're going to be going with. So if there's something you want to inquire about, or if you want to give us a comment or something of that nature, it gives you a little bit of a heads up about what we're going to be doing on each episode. So before we get to the news of the day, let's get started right away with a look at some of the more intriguing matches you're going to find in the next round of our tag team tournament. Remember, we started out with 256 tag teams, and I told you guys at the beginning of the tournament, we really wanted to represent as many combinations as possible, and while doing that, we wanted to make sure that anybody that had multiple representations, that they were eliminated the duplicates as early as possible. Now, some of them have lasted a little while. You'll see that in the voting this round, but generally speaking, you guys have done such an amazing job in this tournament, and I want to actually welcome, and I don't know how many are tuned in right now, but there have been a lot of new people participating in the tournament. This week was our largest turnout for the tournament voting. It was very awesome. And to be perfectly honest with you, a couple of matches I'll talk about a little later, you'll hear somebody who's in a match in this round, and you're like, wait a minute, didn't they lose last round? There was some really close voting in round 3. For example, the match between Akeem and the Boss Man versus Stud and Bundy, that was literally determined by one vote. There were a couple matches that were like that. So as we go through, some people will be shocked, other people will not be shocked with some of the winners and losers. So in the first match I want to highlight in the next round, Rob Van Dam and Sabu are going to take on the Road Warriors. I know to a lot of people, whenever I say the Road Warriors, their name instantly is the winner of any match, and I'm not telling you not to do that in this match. As I've said before, I'm not telling you who to vote for in any of these rounds. I think that's completely subjective and up to you. Every person finds a reason to vote for whoever they vote for based on their own fandom. I'm not here to support or refute anything that anybody chooses. However, what I will say is this. People, when they think about these teams, try to think about them when they were in their absolute apex, the best part of their career. And the issue that some people are having with that, and this is why the Road Warriors are an interesting tag team in this tournament, is some people were not around in the wrestling business or fandom back in the early to mid to late 1980s. Some people didn't jump on board until the late 90s, early 2000s, things like that. So the successes of the Road Warriors, their measuring stick is very different from some other people's. Now, for me personally, I've been watching the Road Warriors since they were the AWA Tag Team Champions. I know they were around before that, and I have since gone back and watched their earlier work, and I'm impressed with that as well, especially when you find out where they came from and things like that. But my reference point for the Road Warriors was AWA Tag Team Champions, and my first match that I really, was just hooked on the Road Warriors was watching them walk out to face the Koloffs, the U.S. versus Russia. Now, with Rob Van Dam and Sabu, I live in outside of Philadelphia. I'm a huge ECW guy, and I cannot give you enough about how important Rob Van Dam and Sabu were to the long-term success of ECW. I don't think we would even be talking about ECW anymore in the way that we do without those two people. Now, I'm not taking anything away from people like Tommy Dreamer and Taz and Raven and Sandman and all that. I get that. They're all important. When it comes down to it, when it was first launching, Sabu was a critical piece of the puzzle that Paul Heyman used to really get his product over, and I don't believe that we would be talking as much about ECW, nor that it would have been successful long enough enough to see some of the other talents that I just mentioned had Sabu not come in and really popped the town and really brought some attention to ECW. With Rob Van Dam, he was so unique. He had such a unique moveset. He had that extraordinarily long run as ECW television champion, one that he never actually lost. He had to have it taken away from him due to injury and things of that nature. So there's just been so much that these two contributed to ECW. So when we look at this match, I can easily see how people can go either way. Not because I agree one way or the other, but because when you grow up in a different era, when your experience and your exposure to these guys is so different, it really does drive your voting conscience a little differently. The next match I want to talk about is one that, some people may look at on the surface and be like, yeah, I don't really care. For me, again, because of when I grew up watching wrestling, this is big for me. It's Sting and Lex Luger taking on Ted DiBiase and Dr. Death Steve Williams. Because I don't know if a lot of people, and I shouldn't say that, I don't know if as many of the younger audience are as diligent enough to go back and look at, say, the WWE Network and pull up Mid-South Wrestling and really see the quality of the matches of Ted DiBiase and Dr. Death Steve Williams that they put on for people. And this was leading all the way up to where the UWF eventually evolved out of Mid-South Wrestling when Bill Watts tried to go national. And then, of course, Sting and Luger, that goes without saying. Sting, one of the all-time greats, one that we still talk about wanting to still see step back in the ring one more time for. And Lex Luger, who, before some tragic turns of events, really had a phenomenal career and had a huge impact on wrestling. I know people sometimes make fun of his work ethic, his desire for the business, his passion for the business or lack thereof, and his moveset and things like that, and how green he was when he first hit the main stage. But you cannot argue with results, and the results are this. Lex Luger held every major championship there was to hold in the NWA or WCW. He held high prestige enough to hold a main event program at WrestleMania with Yokozuna, to hold a main event program with Yokozuna at SummerSlam. He was the man who kind of took over when Hulk Hogan left in '93. If you remember, he's the guy who did the body slamming of Yokozuna on the USS Intrepid. Lex Luger had an impact. He's one of the guys who beat Hulk Hogan for the WCW title at the Paramount of the NWO angle. So there's a lot of different things you could look at here in this match. But for those people who only know Ted DiBiase as the $1 Million Man and only know Dr. Death Steve Williams as one of two things, either he's the guy from the Brawl for All, I'm sorry, I almost said Tough Enough, from Brawl for All, who really didn't materialize, or he's, a guy who was a tag team wrestler with Terry Gordy. That's another one that I get a lot of. But he had a whole lot that he did before that. He was UWF World Champion. He was a huge player in Mid-South with DiBiase. They were a killer tag team, both babyface and heel. So this match is a lot closer than a lot of people will potentially give it credit for. That's why I'm thrilled. I could tell from the voting the last round that we have a lot of old timers and we have a lot of young guys, and their votes are almost split down the middle on some of these votes. And this is one of those matches I actually kind of feel like that's the way it's going to be. It's going to be very close. The next match, much the same thing. We have a much more contemporary pairing and a much older pairing. So we have the Outsiders, Hall and Nash, one of the best tag teams in the latter part of WCW, taking on the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov, former two-time WWF Tag Team Champions. They won the titles the first time at WrestleMania 1. They lost them back. Actually, they only held the titles one time, actually. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking of Wyndham and Rotunda, because that's who they swapped the belts with. But, again, World Tag Team Champions, Outsiders, multiple-time WCW Tag Team Champions. I don't know how much credence or credibility you give that, considering, Nash was booking half the time. But, again, two very worldly different teams. Now, here's the thing. Again, people will look at the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov, and they'll say, well, that's that decrepit old Arab dude and that wannabe Russian guy. And the truth is back in 1984, 85, 86, the Sheik was still tough. Volkov was challenging Hogan in world title matches. So, again, think about these people in their heyday. I'm not telling you which way to vote, and I hope none of my conversation or dialogue here, I'm trying to present both sides for every pairing. Because I don't have any allegiance here. I really couldn't care less who comes out the winner. I just want you guys to enjoy the process. So, I'm going to get going with some of today's news. This has been a big week, starting with 5-Star Wrestling. So last week we talked about 5-Star Wrestling making a monstrous offer to CM Punk, $1 million offer to come in and wrestle in their 128-man tournament. Then we talked about Rob Van Dam signed on to be a part of the tournament, which was huge. Now it's only a week later and they have canceled their their entire rack of shows. They're claiming it's due to the Manchester bombings. They've moved the show tapings to next February. Now, if you accept that on face value, that's not such a problem. We'll get to it eventually, But for the wrestling fan who looks at this and says, man, 128 guys was hard enough to put together to begin with. You wait another year. And here's why I say this is an issue. You wait another year. There's a lot of the talent that's available via free agent right now that won't be there. Kyle O'Reilly, Adam Cole, people like that, Donovan Dijak. There's a chance, and we're going to talk about this a little later, about Dalton Castle won't be there. So this was a great time for them to pull this tournament off. Even if you could only get those guys on a short-term part of it and have them eliminated earlier in the tournament, they really needed to make this thing happen now. There's so much marquee talent out there, and they're going to miss the chance to exploit those talents and really lend some credibility to their tournament. There's a plethora of talent in the independent world. Don't get me wrong. I know there's more than 128 great guys, but these aren't just great guys. These are some guys who have main evented pay-per-views for Ring of Honor or TNA or wherever, and that would have really helped sell their program to the international audience instead of just targeting one specific demographic. In other news, Miz and Ambrose, the plans for Extreme Rules, the rumor is that Elias Sampson is going to be the one who's going to end up costing Ambrose the Intercontinental title, and not because he's going out of his way to help out the Miz. Quite the opposite. Elias Sampson has portrayed this bizarre character the whole time he's been in the WWE, whether it was NXT or now the main roster. He was out a few weeks ago when he did his debut. He faced Ambrose, and the Miz came out and purposely attacked Sampson, giving him the win, but preventing him from having Ambrose's Intercontinental Championship. And the thought process here would be is that Elias Sampson is looking to get revenge on the Miz, so he'll clobber the Miz, causing the disqualification and giving the Intercontinental title back to the Miz. You could see that coming a mile away, and I'm really hoping they don't do that. Sampson has no other role on the pay-per-view, and you want to get him as much exposure as you can to really get him over. So I fear that that's exactly what we're going to see happen tomorrow night. I hope I'm wrong, but Ambrose right now, if you look at the Vegas betting odds, is the only champion favored to lose right now. Speaking of what we were just talking about that 5-star wrestling and the free agents out there, Ring of Honor's star, Dalton Castle, I mentioned his name a few minutes ago. There is a conversation about him potentially making a move to World Wrestling Entertainment later this summer. His contract expires this summer, and as is the case with a lot of the Ring of Honor talents lately, when their contract is up, WWE seems to be destination location. The issue is that there have been some concerns that WWE reaches out to these guys before their actual contracts run out. And if that's the case, well, that's an issue. You can't do that. If you're under contract to somebody else, you can't be negotiating with a rival company. So WWE has kind of backed off a little bit. That's why we haven't seen Adam Cole. We haven't seen Kyle O'Reilly or Donovan Dijak, Leo Rush, people like that coming to WWE is because WWE doesn't want to get into some kind of legal entanglement because they approach somebody too soon. And that could be a real issue. So hopefully WWE is a little more disciplined in how they handle this. And they're the biggest company in the world. They're going to always acquire new talent. I think they could win any of those arguments in a court of law. But it does look awful shady when it seems to happen every time a free agent leaves one of those marquee locations. Impact Wrestling has their Slammiversary card. A good portion of it is already filled out and ready to go. We're going to go over that real quick. The main event of the show is going to be a World Championship unification match. So they're going to see Bobby Lashley, the current Impact Wrestling champion, take on Alberto El Patron, the Global Force Wrestling champion, in a unification match. We'll also see the newly crowned X Division champion Sanjay Dutt defend his title in a rematch against Low Ki. This match will be 2 out of 3 falls. In what I think is one of the most horrible match ideas in the history of Impact Wrestling, Jeremy Borash, an announcer, is going to team up with Joseph Park, who is Abyss reincarnated into his non-insane form, which is a horrible idea. Abyss is so much better when he's just left to be Abyss. Taking on Josh Matthews, who, former Tough Enough guy, he's also an announcer, tag teaming with Scott Steiner, who can't move like any Scott Steiner version we've ever seen before. This match has absolute snorefest written all over it, and it's going to be a flop if you ask me, but that's booked for the card. For the Knockouts Championship, Rosemary is going to take on Sienna. In Full Metal Mayhem, Davey Richards and his wife Angelina Love are going to battle Eddie Edwards and his wife Alicia. In a strap match, James Storm is going to take on EC3. I can't even figure out EC3's character anymore. Good guy, bad guy, who knows? Whatever. They need to give him a whole new package. If you're trying to rid the company of any references to Dixie Carter, get rid of the EC3 name and give him something else to do, because it's beating a dead horse. And Eli Drake is scheduled to team with Chris Adonis. Now, the only concern there is Chris Adonis actually hurt himself in the television tapings in India, so we'll have to see if he's able to go or not. So Eli Drake and Chris Adonis will take on Moose and NFL running back D'Angelo Williams, most recently of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's currently a free agent. Those who know me know I'm a big football guy as well. I'm kind of curious to see if this is something D'Angelo Williams wants to do one time, or if he actually wants to give it a go. You know, he's athletic enough to make that happen. We have our first question coming in. It's from Triple H. I think they're trying to go for Triple H, but they spelled it Triple ACHE 84. Triple H 84, who wants to know if I feel the brand split has hindered WWE booking with both women and cruiserweights. Absolutely. That's my direct answer. Absolutely. I think SmackDown has done a far better job of exposing the women than WWE's Raw brand has done of showing off the cruiserweights. The issue with that statement, though, is that the original brand split years ago, the women went to one show, or at least the women's championship, and the cruiserweight title went to the other show. And in this situation, the women are on both shows, and cruiserweights are only on one. That is a flaw in and of itself. SmackDown needs the cruiserweights as well. There shouldn't be a separate cruiserweight champion for both brands. They don't have enough talent to do that. But there's no reason they couldn't have a floating champion. In that situation, I think they're really screwing up. When it comes to the women, they split the women down the middle, and you took one of the biggest feuds of the year last year, male or female, Sasha Banks and Charlotte. You split them onto different brands, so you can never revisit that again, at least not without another split. You take someone like Bayley as your flagship person, and she hasn't gotten over the way I think they wanted her to. I know when she first debuted, she got the huge pop and she could barely talk to the crowd, but therein lies the problem. She has a tough time talking to the crowd. You know, you have Alexa Bliss now with her, and I think they make for a good program, but their program can't go on a full year till the next flop, till the next superstar shakeup, or whatever we're going to call it next time. I think Raw is left in a tough position right now. SmackDown seems to be doing well, but Raw is hurting, and that's your flagship show. Raw can't seem to figure out how to showcase the cruiserweights the right way. You got like 17 of them on the roster, but you only ever show 4 of them, and it's the same 4 every week. How many times are we going to have to see TJ Perkins and Neville take on Austin Aries and Jack Gallagher? And how many times are we going to see Jack Gallagher take the fall? Jack Gallagher is a fantastic talent. He needs to pin Neville once in a while. But, to answer your question, Mr. Triple H 84, I think they have fundamentally destroyed their booking when it comes to the women and to the cruiserweights, at least when it comes to Raw. SmackDown, like I said, they don't even have cruiserweights, supposedly. Let's look at some of the other matches coming up in round 4. So we've got Ric Flair and Greg the Hammer Valentine. They are going to take on Harlem Heat. I honestly have no idea what direction you guys are going to go with that, and I really don't have a problem either way. Harlem Heat, one of the most decorated tag teams in the history of WCW. Flair and Valentine are a throwback to an era that is long gone. The 70s and early 80s, tag team wrestling was a very different thing. It wasn't, it's bizarre too, because the 70s tag team scene really gave birth to the 80s tag team scene. In my opinion, the 80s was the greatest era in tag team wrestling in history. Teams like the Rock and Roll Express, the Koloffs, the Midnight Express, the Fantastics, the Sheepherders, you name it. There was these teams that once you formed a team, you stayed a team forever. And that made it so you got so familiar with your partner, you were able to put out a work ethic that was tough to be challenged by anybody. And Flair and Valentine came through just before that. They came through when, one guy would win the tag titles with one partner. When they lose it, he'd pick up a different partner and win it again. Then he'd pick up a different partner and win it again. I never liked that. But Flair and Valentine were a very formidable team. And I always found it interesting when Ric Flair retired on Raw, when they had that beautiful celebration, and Valentine was one of the first people out to congratulate him, which I thought was awesome, because it's like a lot of people at that point, unless you're a diehard like me, I don't know if a lot of people knew that Flair and Valentine were a tag team back in the 70s. And they were fantastic. It was because Flair had teamed with Greg Valentine's father at one point. His father was hurt in the plane crash, same one that took Flair out for a little while, and Greg Valentine was a natural comeback and fill in when his father couldn't wrestle anymore. So it's an interesting matchup. Pick who you'd like. I don't have a preference either way. And the next one, Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, the Four Horsemen, taking on Hiroshi Tenzan and Satoshi Kojima. One of the best tag teams, technically sound in the history of American wrestling, versus, again, a phenomenal, technically sound tag team in Japan. I don't know that I can give you a lot of feedback on this for one reason. My heart is going one direction and one direction only, so I'm not going to give you any information on either of these. If you don't know these teams, look them up on YouTube. Tully and Arn or Tenzan and Kojima. Don't forget, if you want to call in, leave a question or a comment for us, it is free to dial in to the Fro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160. Send us your thoughts, your questions, comments, anything you want. When you call into that line, it is a talk-to-text service. So whatever you say is going to pop up on my screen, and I'll have the opportunity to see your questions and address them as soon as I can. And here we go with another question from our weekly warrior. I love this guy because this is, I think, if memory serves, this is either the third or the fourth straight week. We have Barry Harry Larry. Barry, I don't know who you are, but I absolutely love you to death. You tune in every week, and that's awesome. Barry Harry Larry, he's asking if Sanjay Dutt winning the X Division title is the direct result of Jinder Mahal winning the WWE title. I would argue, all right, I'm not going to say they gave Sanjay Dutt the belt because Jinder Mahal got the belt. I won't say that. Though it is awful coincidental that a guy who couldn't win it for 15 years suddenly wins it right after Jinder Mahal. I see the connection there. But what I think both companies are doing has nothing to do with either one of these guys, and that is they're trying to lock down the Indian market, which represents 1.8 billion people and hundreds of millions that would potentially tune into their program every week. And it just coincidentally that they both are trying to appeal to that market at the same time. I think when you put the belt on Sanjay Dutt, the people really pop because he is a homegrown talent. He is a native Indian wrestler. So this is not the same thing as Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal is representing the Indian fans, and I know he gets some respect in that regard, but Jinder Mahal is Canadian. Okay, I'm not trying to be mean towards the angle they're running, but he's Canadian. Okay, you can only make believe so much. Now I know he has descent, so I have no problem with him playing the character, and I actually would support. I actually saw online somebody made a comment, and I try to go out of my way to plug the different shows that I tune into and I pay attention to, because despite the fact that I love having you guys listen to me, and I hope you guys listen to me every week because I'm selfish like that, but the truth is there are some great programs out there, and one of those is WrestleZone.com. I'm sorry, WrestleZone's fantastic. I apologize, I said the wrong one though. I was targeting Wrestle Talk. Wrestle Talk News does shows pretty much every day. They're like 4 minutes, and they cover a big topic each day or two. And with regards to this, the conversation about Jinder Mahal, I saw one of their episodes, I scrolled down, I was looking at the feedback that people were giving, and one person claimed to have been from India and was saying that it's not the way WWE is representing it. The Indian fans, they're not oblivious. They know that Jinder Mahal was a jobber, and some people are actually offended that they took a jobber and made him world champion just to try to get more views. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the guy's really from India or if he's just a really smart person trying to stir some trouble. But if that's true, WWE better be worried about that. You know, if you want to convince people to tune into your product based on their ethnicity or their cultural background, and it's not actually that cultural background, you better have a good way to explain that, because you don't want to offend anybody. Look, every country that has professional wrestling has passionate fans. I've really seen that. I used to put on here, as many people have asked me why I don't do this anymore, I used to give you weekly suggestions about different promotions to tune into around the world, just to give you some exposure to places you may never have heard of. Australia, South Africa, stuff in Israel and Egypt and stuff like that. And I would try to give you as many suggestions as I could. But what I can tell you is, no matter what show I ever watched or how many people were in attendance, people loved what they saw, no matter where they were. There was raving fans everywhere. So I know I've gone off on a tangent here, but I felt like it was worth it. You know, that's the beautiful thing about these live shows. You guys can throw me something, we can just talk and talk and talk, and it's a beautiful thing. By all means, Barry Harry Larry, I would love for you to give me a shout one time on the line here and give some back and forth banter. when you get your comment out there, feel free to give me some rebuttal. I'm okay with that. I would love to get some feedback from you instantly. It'd be beautiful. So I'm going to move on to some more news. The ITV wrestlers, the ones who signed on for World of Sport contracts over in Europe, the United Kingdom, Great Britain, the ones that Jeff Jarrett was so heavily involved with and was going to be using Impact Wrestling talent for, a lot of those wrestlers want out of their deals. Because, they did a one-off show in January. The plan was to do, I guess it was like 16 more episodes or something of that nature, but it hasn't happened yet. WWE has come knocking for some of these people. There's a female wrestler named Viper, who WWE is very much interested in having come in for the Mae Young Classic. And so these people have an opportunity to capitalize on WWE's expansion into the United Kingdom, and, in her case, be a part of something very unique and very special. So, something to keep an eye on, because this could fall apart on Impact Wrestling pretty quickly. And ITV and World of Sports and whatnot, There are a new batch of female talents headed to the WWE Performance Center. Some people have automatically jumped to the conclusion they must be participating in Mae Young Classic. That is possible. I'm not saying it's not happening, but I'm also not going to confirm that until I know that's for sure. I know that Hyori Hojo from Japan, Evie from New Zealand, Nixon Newell from the United Kingdom, and Demi Bennett from Australia are all included in that list. So they're definitely bringing in people from various locales. Remember, they were supposed to be representing 16 countries around the world. I guess this is one of the ways they're going to try to do that, is by bringing in some of this non-homegrown talent, which is nice to see for a change. Gail Kim, speaking of the women and the women's revolution and women's wrestling in general, is upset that WWE isn't recognizing that TNA had the first women's ladder match. I got to respond to that. And sometimes I get myself in trouble when I talk about controversial topics. Has Impact Wrestling, TNA, or whatever you want to call them, had female ladder matches? Yes, they have. Several. Okay? Now, here's the issue I have. WWE has at no point in time said that they were going to be holding the first ever women's ladder match. Okay? They've never said that. What they have said is they're going to hold the very first ever women's Money in the Bank ladder match. That's something completely different. Okay? A ladder match in general, there's something suspended above the ring and you got to get it. And in most cases, in Impact Wrestling, it was the women's championship. That is not what this is. This is for a briefcase to cash in for a world championship opportunity at any point in time throughout the next year. Those are not the same things. WWE doesn't have to acknowledge, hey, we're going to put out this ladder match, but hey, look, our competitor, they had ladder matches before, but our ladder match is better. Think about how that would come across. It's kind of stupid to put out there, hey, they never acknowledged us. Why would they? They're not competing with you. They've got 10 times the fan base that TNA Impact Wrestling has, despite their sinking ratings. So I have nothing but incredible respect for Gail Kim. She is one of the greatest female performers in the history of the business, and in my opinion, probably more responsible for a women's revolution than anybody will ever give her credit for. Her matches with Awesome Kong were legendary. First females that I ever saw main event a television program. They main evented Impact Wrestling, and they tore the house down in a women Knockouts championship match. I will never take anything from Gail Kim in that regard. I just think that she's taken it a little too personally here with this conversation and WWE not recognizing the women's ladder match. That's not what they're promoting. They're promoting Money in the Bank. I want to talk about a few more matches in the tag team tournament. Let's get to a couple more. We have War Machine, who are huge right now. New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, they are huge, taking on, speaking of huge, the winners of the match that I referenced earlier, Big John Studd and King Kong Bundy. Yes, Studd and Bundy defeated Akeem and the Boss Man by exactly 1 vote. So, we'll see what you guys do with this here. Studd and Bundy, the Heenan family, was just awesome back in that day. And they ran hot and heavy with Hulk Hogan and Hillbilly Jim and Andre the Giant, Superfly Snuka, and anybody else who was of any substance back then. And of course, War Machine is tearing it up right now. They can go with just about anybody. So again, I don't care who you pick here. I think they're both fantastic tag teams. I just want you, when you do this match, whoever you pick, because I can see it both ways, whoever you pick, picture in your mind the match actually unfolding. Picture the end of the match, because I'm just curious to see. And you can feel free, put it in the comments section. Once we get finished with a live episode, it gets posted to YouTube. Feel free to pop into the YouTube feed or go into our voice messaging system, 267-642-1160, and tell me your finish, because I would love to know what the finish is to that match. The other match in this section I want to talk about, the Hollywood Blondes, Stunning Steve Austin and Brian Pillman taking on the Hart Foundation, Bret Hart, Jim Neidhart. I know right away, this is kind of like the Road Warriors. When the Hart Foundation's name comes up, everybody immediately jumps to the Hart Foundation. Please really think through this. And I'm not telling you not to vote Hart Foundation. I just want you to have an open mind for every match. That's all I'm emphasizing. You know, the Hollywood Blondes, you have Steve Austin and Bret Hart, in my opinion, as far as this match is concerned, are a wash. So it comes down to Brian Pillman and Jim Neidhart, who are pretty close to a wash. So just take it with, take your time with these, because I'm really curious to see, again, who you guys choose for that. It'll be interesting to see who they match up with, whoever the winner is in the next round. Make sure you're calling in and leaving your questions and comments on the Sound Off line, 267-642-1160. With that being said, let's get on to a big topic this week, and that is Hulk Hogan's return to World Wrestling Entertainment. They have now promoted Hulk Hogan in a magazine over in Europe on the WWE tour. They have made more and more references to him in the television programming here in the United States. He's not as hidden on the network as he was at one point. And according to Hulk Hogan, he's had conversations with Vince McMahon about returning. Surprise? No. The issue for me is when are we going to get on with it? Because here's the thing, man. You're sending a message. Either you're telling the whole world that when you make a mistake like Hulk Hogan made, an egregious one, when you make a mistake like that, you should never be forgiven, which is what they're saying right now. Or if you bring him back, you're saying, hey, listen, he was gone for this long because he did something he absolutely shouldn't have done. We held him accountable, and now we're going to move on. People deserve a second chance. That is my opinion. I think he did something horrible. It's egregious. It should never be tolerated. But if we're going to allow professional sports athletes who smack around their girls or who are drugged out of their mind to get busted and all this to come back to different sports, then we have to, someone who has a horrible, horrible choice of words, no matter how bad his choice of words were, it wasn't as bad as the video I saw of Ray Rice. Now, that's a horrible comparison because Ray Rice never made it back either, but that I think is more because he was deteriorating on the field to begin with. We just saw a draft where Joe Mixon got drafted to go to the Cincinnati Bengals, and he is a woman abuser too. So, just saying, keep your eyes on those kinds of things. When you're passing judgment on people, you got to have a more unilateral way to look at things. Let's go on more matches in round 4. We have Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes. Now, hear me when I say this. Remember what I said at the beginning of the tournament? I wanted to try to eliminate the doubles and the duplicates and whatnot. Just because there was so many in certain areas, I was not able to get to this one until now. Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes taking on the Brotherhood of Goldust and Stardust. So yes, Dustin Rhodes is represented twice, or Dustin Runnels is represented twice. So you have Windham and Rhodes, former WCW Tag Team Champions, versus the Brotherhood, the former WWE Tag Team Champions. Again, couldn't care less which way you go. They're both fantastic tag teams. And we have the Midnight Express. This is actually my favorite match of the round, I think. The Midnight Express, Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane, taking on the Nasty Boys, Knobbs and Sags. It seems like, because of the time period that they were around, it seems like they would have faced each other at some point. But they didn't. Not to my knowledge, at least. You know? Just something that should have happened. So, I don't care how you guys pick. I know which way I would go on that one, but what a cool matchup. And I have another one for you. So we've got the world's greatest tag team, Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas, who were WWE Tag Team Champions in SmackDown and whatnot. They were the ones who went toe-to-toe with the Guerreros for a long, extended period of time, hung out with Kurt Angle for quite a while. They are taking on the Steiner brothers. And I don't think in the entirety of this tournament that we have had anything that comes even close to the technical prowess of this match. All 4 wrestlers are world-class amateurs before they became professional wrestlers. And at their peaks, both were extraordinarily popular, extraordinarily successful. Now, I know the Steiner brother argument is going to be that they did it in New Japan, they did it in WCW, they held the US tag team titles, they came to WWE and took their tag titles. I get that. I do. Scott Steiner even went to TNA and held tag titles. But World's Greatest Tag Team were in WWE, which does not let their talent farm out for any other occasion. So when the Steiner brothers won the IWGP tag titles the first time, they were under WCW's banner, and it was a co-promoted thing, a super Starrcade in Tokyo in 91 or 92, whatever it was, where they won the IWGP tag titles. I want to say from Hase and Sasaki, or maybe it was Hase and Chono, I can't remember. They did win them again only a few years back when Scott was in Impact Wrestling, but I think that was more of a pop the town kind of thing. I really do. They didn't hold them very long. It was like a real momentary thing. They came in, won them, and then lost them very shortly after. So I don't put a lot of stock behind the New Japan Tag Team Championship win. By the way, World's Greatest Tag Team also went to Japan. But when you look at the body of work, both of these teams, they're so similar in their what they do in the ring. So I would love to see this one just be a total all-out war shoot. No work, just shoot, just to see what these guys can do. Just an FYI, Sound Off Line is only open for about another 5 minutes or so, just so I can make sure I get to your questions and comments if you have any. So get those questions in there, 267-642-1160. And as a matter of fact, we have a question popping up right now. This is from Paul Jeffers, 1997, who wants to know if I think the Mae Young Classic is a disguise for allowing the main roster women to mix it up without promoting a cross-branded pay-per-view. Wow. I mean, I don't think it is intentionally there for them to mix it up. I won't say that. What I think is if you had any desire for that to take place, I think you save that for either a 5 or a 6-on-6 match at the Survivor Series. That is the only place I would have any spillover, because that way there's no championships on the line. There's no big thing on the line that could favor one brand over the other. And maybe be serious. Right now, which girl would you have win that? You're going to have Charlotte win and then have SmackDown look like they're the better brand, but Raw is the flagship program? Are you going to have Nia Jax win it because you don't want her to win at either one of the women's championships? Are you going to have Asuka debut and have her win it? And that's her way of getting a championship on the main roster without actually having to give her Alexa Bliss or Naomi's championships. There's a lot of ways you could really look at that. I'm not sure. I don't think it's intentional. I haven't even heard the confirmation that they're going to be in the tournament. Now, I know that there was a graphic that was put up advertising the Mae Young Classic where most of the current rosters, the main roster people, were on. And I understand that, but they haven't confirmed anything. We're like kind of flying blind here. We're not sure what exactly it is that they're going to give us. So, yeah, that's hard. I really don't know. I hope not. I actually hope that if they use the main roster women, I hope that they purposely stagger them in a manner so that, and I hate to say it, make it so blaringly obvious, but if you were to make it so every other match had two marquee female wrestlers who are currently on the main roster, so you knew you were going to get a great match in round one, every other match, and then the odd matches, the ones that you didn't have two premier main card people, that's where you put one of your independent girls who you brought in, who you want to really focus on, and put them against maybe an NXT person. So if there's a victory, like you can't have Charlotte come out and lose to Io Shirai in her first debut match. And I know she's not going to be in the tournament, but just follow me on the thought process. You can't have a girl debut with the company and defeat your blue chip. You know what I mean? So that wouldn't make sense. So if they put the main roster girls in there and they separate them so they aren't against each other right away, they have to all win. And in that event, all you did was bring in, 16 independent girls just to sacrifice them to your established stars. And if that's all you wanted to do, just to have a women's King of the Ring or Queen of the Ring or something like that, you don't have to go through all the theatrics of a Mae Young Classic. I actually wish they would have brought back the Cruiserweight Classic again to determine the number one contender to the Cruiserweight title. And I hope they still bring back the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Tournament, because I'm kind of curious if they're going to continue doing that or not. But, yeah, they need to start giving us some more details. That's really what it boils down to. They don't give us enough, and then when they're not giving us enough detail, we just sit here, we debate it to death ad nauseum because we have no idea what to expect. Please pop on over, if you have not already, to our Patreon page at patreon.com/ProWrestlingPodcast. That is where you can become a Pro Wrestling Podcast member. You can, contribute whatever it would be comfortable to you. It helps our podcast grow, and, you get a shout out. The lowest contribution is $1 a month. and you get a shout out in all of our podcast episodes, we put you in the notes. Then, all the way up to, if you want to be one of those people who really knocks it out of the park, you want to throw us $50 a month, I'm gonna call you up, shoot you a message, whatever you prefer, and I'm gonna get you a weekend set up for you to broadcast live with me. I'll bring you in via a telephone call. We'll patch you in, and you could broadcast live with me. And to be perfectly honest with you, what some people may not realize about it, is heading into these live episodes, a lot of it I try to go with off the cuff. So I don't want it to sound scripted. I hate that. But to be perfectly honest with you, some of it is. And when I say that, what I mean is I have a topic sheet that gives me things that I know I want to make sure I hit. But then there's always something like earlier with Barry, Harry, Larry. You throw a question at me and I can go off on a tangent for 10 minutes. I want to let that happen. So if you're one of those people who contributes $50 a month to our Patreon page, I want you to be a part of that creative process with me. So when I get in touch with y'all, I'll shoot you the ideas I'm thinking about for that week. You give me your ideas. We'll put it together as a unit. And that way when we go live, you know what we're going to talk about. You have strong opinions. And to be perfectly honest with you, one of the things I'm notorious for is I like to play devil's advocate. So whatever you're saying when we're broadcasting live, I will purposely try to bring in some banter and probably argue out the issues with you a little bit just to make it more engaging and exciting. So by all means, if you would like to help us out, shoot on over to patreon.com/ProWrestlingPodcast and contribute in any way that you can. We'd appreciate it. Don't forget about our website for the podcast itself, FroLifePlanning.com/FroPodcast. When you go there, you'll see a list of the topics that we are looking to discuss in the most recent episodes. You'll get an opportunity to see our interview series, the different interviews that we've held with some of the talents, whether it's Tully Blanchard, Dr. Tom Pritchard, Jim Brunzell, Johnny Mantella, whoever we've talked and spoken to, Marek Brave. Pop in, check out those episodes if they're some of your favorites. There are links to our football podcast, which is going to start picking up shortly with training camp on the way. And there are links to all of our sponsors. And speaking of sponsors, I have to, because I don't always get an opportunity to give a shout out to all of our sponsors. And that some of that's by design. I hate to be that guy, but if you don't pay for the advertising time, I don't always shoot them out there. But I have some that I really, really want to highlight. And those I have in the past, but I want to highlight them again this episode. So, www.thegamecrafter.com/games/sketchypeople. Great game, entertainment for the family, whether they're little kids all the way through late adulthood. Awesome game. So pick up a copy today. I want to say it runs around $33.99. TheGameCrafter.com/games/legendary elements. Another very cool game. Futuristic thing. You're on, a mission to collect orbs or something of that nature. Another one that's in the neighborhood of 30, 32, something like that. And TheGameCrafter.com/games/banana market. A little more complicated. Get a shopping list. Got to make your way around the market in a certain way and pick up all your groceries before you can head out to the checkout line. Very cool games from the Game Crafter. It should be obvious to the people who tune in every week. I'm always talking Game Crafter games. GameCrafter.com is a phenomenal website where people can go on and create their own board games, card games, whatever. And one of the nice things for someone like me who has a relatively smaller podcast, I could pop in there and find game designers and bring their product to you guys. So I hope some of you take a few moments and check out some of those games because they are awesome. And if you want direct links because you don't want to have to try to write down all the links that I just spouted out at the lip, take down one. And that's FroLifePlanning.com/FroPodcast. There are direct links to all three of those games right on our page. In addition, always thank you to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com. They give us all the music and sound effects that we use throughout every episode. And without them, this would not sound like the production that it does currently. I'm sure some people would argue that it could be better. But thanks to them as always. And to AlleyRepair.com. Alley Repair is for servicing of all of your classic skee ball. That's the ones you see down at the boardwalk. Your pinball and arcade game needs. I don't know if people realize this, but classic skee ball games, there's almost nobody in the country anymore that services them here in the United States. This guy does. Check out his website and let him help you out. Be sure to shoot over to our regular website at FroLifePlanning.com if you are planning to go to college, a university, or you're looking for a career change. That is what I specialize in my downtime, what little downtime I have. Now, FroLife Educational Planning is based around the premise that Everybody out there has a perfect job waiting for them, a perfect career or a perfect educational path. I want to help you find that path. So by all means, go to frolifeplanning.com and click on the Contact Us tab. And when you go there, you can send us an email with your desires and I can get in touch with you. We are giving away free initial consultations with all new clients in the month of June. So pop over to frolifeplanning.com, pop your information into there, and I can get in touch with you about what opportunities await. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. If you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, as I've said before, go to tsjsports.com/WWE. I have articles up there. The rest of the writing team does as well. And then, I've said this before. I'll say it again. Our viewing audience, you guys have been growing rampantly in the last few weeks. I can't tell you what that means to me. It means the world. Thank you so much. There are people who tune in literally 3, 4, 5 times a week. Our views have been skyrocketing. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. And, if you get the opportunity, give us a share, give us a like, please give us comments and give us subscribes. If you know somebody who is into the world of professional wrestling, we are always wanting to deliver the most entertainment we can. And the only way we can deliver the best entertainment is with your feedback. So if there is something out there that you want us to discuss, call into our Sound Off line. If there's something you want me to talk about, shoot us a message, let us know. We want to make this as entertaining for you as we can. So until next time, guys, please enjoy the pay-per-view tomorrow night. I still say Ambrose is the only one losing his championship, and watch for Bray Wyatt to win that World Championship #1 Contenders Fatal 5-Way match. But check that out, enjoy it, and I will be back on here hopefully Monday to give you guys some recap and review. So, till next episode, take care. This is Mr. Fro signing off.